guys, welcome back to my channel, Art Tingles ASMR. Today I'm going to be doing a Halloween inspired speed paint and also be reading scary stories. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The first story is called The Red Ribbon. Bill whistled as he strolled through the park. He was on his way to meet his girlfriend, Sally. He could smell the spring in the air. He jingled the engagement ring in his pocket and thought about asking Sally to marry him. Sally sat down on a park bench and Bill kneeled down in front of her. "Sally," Bill said, "you are the most beautiful girl I've ever met. I love you and I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me?" Sally laughed and said, "Yes, I will marry you." As Bill gazed lovingly at his bride-to-be, his eyes lingered on the red velvet ribbon Sally always wore around her neck. "Why do you always wear that red ribbon?" Bill asked. Sally said, "Bill, I must never take off my red ribbon. Red ribbon, red ribbon, red ribbon." Bill smiled at Sally and left the ribbon alone. Bill and Sally were married that June. Bill found a lovely little house in a nice neighborhood and they moved in. Bill bought Sally many party dresses, but Sally always wore her red ribbon with each outfit. Bill thought this was odd. Sally just smiled and said, "I must never take off my red ribbon." After a few years, Sally found out she was going to have a baby. This news delighted Bill. Sally talked with her friends who had babies. Bill talked with his buddies who had children. They talked together late into the night about what they had learned from everyone. When the big day came, Sally said, "Please tell the doctor I must not take off my red ribbon." Bill was frustrated, but he promised Sally that he would tell the doctor. After the baby was born, Bill gave Sally flowers. "Thank you for the flowers, Bill," Sally said. "And thank you for telling the doctor I must not take off my red ribbon." Bill did not understand why the red ribbon was so important. "Do you want to hold little Billy?" Sally asked. Bill, Sally, and little Billy lived happily for many years in a small, lovely house in a nice neighborhood. When little Billy was a baby, he would sometimes reach for the red ribbon around his mother's neck. Sally would gently take his little hands in hers and coo him, saying, "Mommy must never ever take off her red ribbon, red ribbon." The red ribbon had frustrated Bill for a long time. He loved Sally with all of his heart and did not understand her need to wear the red ribbon. After many years, Bill had an idea. "Our anniversary is coming up and I will buy Sally a beautiful necklace. She will take off that old red ribbon so she can wear the beautiful necklace." The anniversary came. Bill took Sally to a fancy restaurant overlooking Central Park. They had a delicious meal. When Bill gave Sally a velvet treasure it always, she said, but I must never take off my red ribbon. Why? Bill asked, as he had for so many years. Sally smiled sadly and shook her head. She did not answer him. Late that night, Bill was still awake. I loved Sally for more than 20 years, but she still insists on wearing that horrible red ribbon around her neck. I think it's about time I found out why. Bill got out of bed and walked around to Sally's side. Bill carefully pinched the ends of the bow on the ribbon. He began to pull on both. He began to pull slowly on the ribbon. The bow became smaller and smaller. The loops of the bow pulled through, and only half the knot was left. Bill slid his finger under the half knot and tugged. Zip! The red ribbon gave way. Pop! Sally's head came off. It rolled right to the floor, bouncing in the moonlight. One large tear fell from Sally's eye. I warned you, she said. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I have decided to create an intermission here, just so I could talk a little bit about the drawing in the background, and just to give a bit of a break from the spooky stories. So again, if you watched my last video, I'm using the same thing. I'm using an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, and the software I'm using is called Procreate. I think in future videos I'm going to try and get my camera set up so I can do more traditional style drawings, and maybe do some flip throughs of art books I have, and then maybe even do some role plays in the future. So in the drawing, you may have noticed that I started with my rough sketch already laid out. I've just done this because in the sketching and ideas phase of my process, I use a lot of not safe for work images as references, and I'm pretty sure YouTube wouldn't allow me to show that part of my process, but essentially all that you're missing is a lot of rough work until a certain figure comes out, and then I just keep on building on that, and eventually I come up with like a rough design for the character, and I will then do another line layer on top of the sketch layer, and then just carry on refining it. In this video that I'm showing now, I've only done one line work layer, but that was just for the sake of time. I think in future, when I do longer videos, like hour-long videos, I'll try and include as much of my process as I possibly can. But again, I'm gonna try and do some more traditional art and mix it up a bit. I think just starting out, digital art is a lot easier for me to format the videos around. So for this latest drawing, as you can see, I'm trying to create a witch that has been dismembered. Maybe she's been reborn after being killed off by villagers or an angry mob. job, who knows? But I think it encapsulates Halloween quite well. October's always been one of my favorite months of the year, creatively speaking, because a lot of the content that comes out is obviously catered towards Halloween and people who enjoy, like, say, horror movies and such. So I get a lot of inspiration around this time of year, and I get a little bit of a creative boost. So yeah, cool. And now we are going to move on to the next story, which is called The Day. One night in a small American town, a young girl threw a party and invited all of her friends from school. There was a large group of boys and girls, and as the night went on, they began telling scary stories. One night in a small American town, a young girl threw a party and invited all of her friends from school. There was a large group of boys and girls, and as the night went on, they began telling scary stories. One boy said he had heard an urban legend about an old graveyard that was located near the girl's house. According to the story, an old woman had been buried in the middle of the cemetery, and there were rumors that she was a witch. They said that if someone stood on a grave at midnight, she would grab them and drag them down to hell. I would never go near that graveyard after dark, another boy said. You're all a bunch of morons, laughed the girl. It's just a silly superstition. I can't believe you take it seriously. The boy who had told the story turned to her and sneered. It's all very well to be brave when you're safe and warm in your own. I think you'd have a different attitude if you actually went to that graveyard. It wouldn't make a difference, replied the girl. Okay then, prove it, said the boy. We'll all go down to the cemetery and wait outside while you go in and stand on the old witch's grave. A grave doesn't scare me, said the girl. I'll do it right now. You'll have to prove frozen in a silence